Do you give to heal or to be healed, or both? Let's talk about it. My daughters are just super lovely. They love to share everything that they have, but they also absolutely love to fight. Another day we had a chocolate hunt, and the girls were just loving it, and my heart was just so warmed as my eldest found a chocolate, and the first thing she wanted to do was give it to her sister, and vice versa. The youngest wanted to give it to the eldest, and I was just like, oh, I just felt so good. I was like, oh, I looked at my wife and I was like, yeah, I gave her that fist pump. I'm like, we're doing something right. But then as the sugar kicked in and the sticker, the want for different stickers kicked in, they started scrapping, and something so wonderful began to spin out of control. And so we had to talk to them about sharing and really work on their hearts, and just have these little nuanced conversations for a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And inevitably, once they got over their little sugar rush and the sparkliness of the stickers, they ended up starting to play together, and everything was back to normal. And it got me thinking about how often this happens to us as adults, and how we need to be practice being open. We need to be sharing, because that sharing destroys greed. And being generous can destroy addiction. It can be one of the final steps that we see in overall recovery, is that generosity, because you're giving, you're sharing, you're doing the opposite of what addiction is, which is usually tearing down and breaking things down. So a question for the chat here is, when was the last time you saw someone being greedy, and how do you counteract that? So, today again is the last day for the mind. We've done 10 days of the spirit, now 10 days of the mind, and I think it's fitting that we spend some time in the posture of our bodies, and how we allow healing to be set up in our minds and hearts, and then move towards one of the pinnacles of our healing, which is to be able to get over this greed, which usually is associated with, again, addiction. Now, it can be any form of addiction. It could be food, drinking, spiritual addiction. It could be mental health issues, smoking, self-harm. It can be gaming, anger, drugs, human love and sex, X-rated content, shopping, work. There's a plethora of ones I'm probably missing. But in these addictions, these problems, there's always a reverse order, an evil order to the way things happen in our lives without God, and or as we grow, how God allows us to receive freedom. So addiction usually comes from a place of discontentment. It is like the final straw, where we're so discontented with life that we are starting to run after things to give us that dopamine hit. So addiction usually comes from discontentment. Discontentment destroys others with greed. Greed that then poisons the mind with pride. Pride that then eventually dethrones Jesus as King and as God in our lives. When we receive God's gifts of righteousness, when we are transformed by His mercy, grace, and love, which the love that surpasses all understanding will actually cause the opposite. We will allow Jesus to be on the throne because He served us with ultimate humility. Humility creates and gives us a heart of generosity. Generosity births contentment within us, and then contentment crushes those addictive behaviors. So to go through them again, on one side, you have addiction usually comes from discontentment. Discontentment destroys others with greed. Greed that then poisons the mind with pride. Pride that eventually dethrones Jesus. And on the flip side, you have Jesus on the throne that served us with ultimate humility. Humility that creates in us a heart of generosity. Generosity that births contentment, and contentment that inevitably crushes addictive behaviors. So when these orders are finally reversed, we can clearly see that we are created in love, that we were saved by grace, and we were saved and loved, and there was a need for mercy that came through, and that's why grace and love is shared with us in God's perfect way by giving us Christ on the cross via the Trinity, which gives us purpose, causes us to surrender, love and love others as we love ourselves, which again crushes addiction. It causes us to look outside of our own wants and needs, the things that are always trying to take up our time, our money, our relationships, our hopes and dreams. When we have a heart of generosity, we end up directing and outpouring uh, onto others, which is like a great indicator of the process of sanctification in our lives, not out of compulsion, but out of compassion. This is when we usually see this transition, this change, this move that inevitably allows us to break those bonds of addiction and allow us to become that Christ-like, have that Christ-like character permeate through us. So, small story. A little while ago, I was spending time with a coworker, and we were talking about just the hurts and pains in the city of Toronto, which I live in, and I was born in. And there was just these mass shootings that were going on. There was a lot of gang activity. There was a lot of theft of cars, and the conversation really started to escalate. And we inevitably moved into different concepts and thoughts on morality. But when it came to time to talk about the cure, for the first time in a while, I was stumped. And I just couldn't process everything that was going on in the conversation because things were just so heavy. And I realized that I couldn't bring an answer, forward because I was trying to resolve those issues in my own heart. And I quickly let out a Nehemiah prayer. A Nehemiah prayer is when you've been in prayer for weeks or months or years about a certain topic or situation. In Nehemiah's case, it was about rebuilding the wall that was broken down. And Nehemiah, in that moment when the king, I think it was King Xerxes, asked him, what can I do for you, or what's burdening you? He just said, Lord, help. But he'd been praying about the wall and that burden that was there. And so I had that ability while I've been, I've been working on trying to be a great tent maker and love people in the workplace and point them to the Lord. I had that, Lord, help me. And then it came to me. And little by little, I just started to explain this concept. And it was amazing because I felt like I was learning while I was teaching at the same time. So I explained the massive struggle that pretty much all of us, no matter rich or poor, no matter color, no matter situation, is we're always fighting this problem of greed. And there is obviously a difference between things that we need and things that we want. But the key is that greed, it leans so deeply into what we want, it has nothing to do with what we need. Wanting more is greed. Like just having enough to buy your food and to just live, especially in an expensive city like Toronto, people may deem that to be greedy, but it's actually not. You're just trying to survive. It is the greed that wants just a little bit more. It is that I can't help other people that starts this internal reflection where the lights are just pinned on you all the time. That's when things can get scary. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. Greed can affect everyone. Greed hates our neighbor. Greed and pride destroys ourselves, and pride then destroys God and dethrones God in our own personal lives. And the reason for the world's disarray is because, we are pretty much all plagued by this thing called greed. So when we look at people who do not struggle with greed, we find the exact opposite. We find people who are willing to share whatever they have. They are not prone to falling into addictions because they are not, again, putting the lights on themselves. They are putting the lights on other people. What ended up happening for me when I was really struggling with stealing X-rated content, when I was struggling with overeating, when I was struggling with the addictions of anger, deep forms of lust, and just just being an awful person to be in a relationship with, it was always about me, and I just wanted a little bit more. The bottom six commandments are all against people, coveting and, wanting your neighbor's wife, or trying to steal from someone, or taking someone's life. And all of these are outpourings of this evil, which is greed in our lives. And so when we become generous, and of course, there's people who will fake generosity to get a tax receipt or whatever it might be. When we are doing generosity for real, it short circuits our addictive behaviors, because being an addict is all about me. It's always about me. While being a person who's generous, genuinely generous, is thinking about other people and how we give can affect and help other people. All right, so let's go into some quick quotes here uh, from Tony Robbins. The secret to living is giving. Tony has some idea about giving and helping others. It's estimated that he has directly or indirectly helped over 50 million people in over 100 countries. He has overcome his own personal issues and addictions and personal problems, and it comes through in his heart. If you've ever seen him do any of those one-on-ones, he knows how to permeate into someone's heart like right away. It's absolutely amazing. I don't think he's a Christian by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to give him credit that he understands that when he gives, he's breaking bondages and problems in his life, which is a hard thing to do. You have to train that up over time. Next is by Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put in action, and that action in service. Whatever form we are able to, whether we're disabled, rich or poor, able-bodied, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in what we're doing. A lifelong of sharing love with others. Our homie Mother Teresa knew something about giving up everything. She sold what she had. I think she was in Calcutta, one of the poorest places in the world, and she outpoured her heart. She spent time with people who most people wouldn't even like bat an eye at, or would try to, if they went to go visit a country, they would swerve around it. And I think with seeing all of those heartaches and problems and seeing great and goodness come out of it, her generosity, her heart must have been just so filled with love and giving, because that's the only way to combat the addictions that she saw, the hurt, the pain, the abuse that people were putting each other through. And it's one of the most intrinsic values that as Christians we need to have, is not to give up on people, and to be also patient with ourselves at the same time. And we do that even in and with that one of the most precious commodities we have in the world, which is time, to not be greedy with that and be self-centered with that. Leanne Martin says, our gratitude to God compels us to express love for him by sharing what he's given us. When generosity is full, received and expressed, bad habits have no space in our hearts. We are in a constant loop of love that pushes out the need for addiction. Will addiction come to tempt us? Sure. Will we fail? Yeah, it could happen. But only when we are complacent in the loop and forget to rest and stop being compassionate to others and ourselves, that's when we're going to fail. That's when we're going to fall back into our state of greed. But again, we can fight that with being generous. So what does God have to say about this? In Proverbs 14, verse 31, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. I'm going to read that again. Proverbs 14, verse 31, whoever oppresses a man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. Proverbs 14, verse 31. When we are addicted to various evils, we always directly or indirectly oppress others. We take a part in their spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, relational slavery that they are entangled in. This alone should make us want to stop. But what is even more impactful is that God will honor us when we are generous. What a fantastic promise and polarizing lifestyle choice that can come forth in us and in our lives. Next is Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken, together running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you see, sorry, for the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Once the foundation in our lives is built, once we understand God's system, whatever we are willing to put out, God will bring back in full. When we give out of a cycle of when we give into the cycle of healing, we will be protected and God will help us and walk with us and send people our way to bless us. All right, I'm just going to do that again. Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use it, will be measured back to you. Once the foundation is built in our lives, once we understand God's system, whatever we are willing to put out, God will bring back in full. When we give into the cycle of healing, we will be protected as we listen to the Lord and as we give to others. All right, so 1 John 3, verse 17. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God and his, a little bit, I get it. I'm just gonna take a drink. First John 3:17. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? What a sobering thought. To those who only believe in grace and do nothing beyond that, this is something that should be shouted from the pulpit and from the rooftops. We must be generous in whatever ways God puts in our lives and our hearts. We must, of course, be wise as serpents as well, to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of or someone is just trying to lure us into a bad situation. But it is a fantastic reminder to serve, to stop sinning and improve in our sanctification process. I would challenge you to read the whole of 1 John chapter 3, and that it hopefully cultivates in you a deeper understanding of God's love, his heart, and how much God hates sin, bad habits, and how much God has for us in this life. In closing, as we land the plane here, I just want to sum up, the best part, the ending of the mind. You are either moving in one direction or the other. You're moving either towards greed or towards generosity. You can fake it. You can try your best to be generous, and you can, do things just so people applaud you, high five you, but I promise you, it will show up in the end, and your generosity will blow up in your face if you're not doing it properly. So, as a Christian, I believe, again, we're going to either be moving in one of two directions, and one will move us away from God, and one will move us to God. All of us are born in the running away from and move towards the loving, wonderful, grace-filled life that God has for us. And it flows like this, like I said before. Addiction comes from discontentment. Discontentment destroys others with greed. Greed that then poisons the mind with pride. Pride that eventually dethrones Jesus. Or are you moving towards Jesus, who is on the throne, who served us with ultimate humility? Humility that creates a heart of generosity. Generosity that births contentment, and contentment that crushes addictive behaviors. If you choose greed your byproduct is addictive behavior. If you choose generosity, your byproduct is healing. I'm just going to quickly pray, and then if anyone has any comments or questions, I'm open to talking after. God, whatever I've said and shared tonight in this brief time on greed and generosity, I pray that if it's not from you, O Holy Spirit, I pray that it will be torn down, and that the people listening will walk away from it and not be hurt. But if it is from you, I pray that their hearts will change and that they'll be able to ask questions and get deeper in love with you. I just want to thank you for your love and your grace, and I just pray for those who are struggling with addiction, who are taking this seriously, that you would just wrap your loving arms around them. I thank you for all of these things in your holy and precious name, Jesus. Amen. All right. So, if you would like to see any other videos in the series, please take a look at this playlist up here. If you'd like to subscribe, you could probably take a look right over here. I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day, evening, morning, or night. God bless you.